he got hit with a slow, creeping illness that ate away at him piece by piece, turning every day into a quiet battle he couldn't win. The only thing keeping him going was a strategy game he played non-stop, losing himself in its world just to forget the pain. He kept playing till the very end, right up to his final breath. But death didn't take him away. Instead, he opened his eyes inside that same world he used to escape to. Now completely powerless, no strength, no skills, just him alone in a kingdom of ruins. Now trapped in the game that once gave him comfort. He's got one choice: fight to survive, claw his way back from nothing, and rise to rule the kingdom that's become his new reality. This one's about Takuto, a guy obsessed with an empire management strategy game called Eternal Nations. Even while stuck in a hospital bed, he kept grinding through the game until the very moment he died playing it. But death wasn't the end, because a second later, he finds himself in a forest, chilling on a throne inside some ancient ruins. And the first thing that hits him is how clean the damn air is. Then a woman walks up to him, asking if he's finally awake. And when she shows her face, he knows right away it's Atu, that elven character from the game. She calls him His Majesty. And that's when Takuto starts thinking what the hell's going on. Being a hardcore anime guy, he quickly figures he must have gotten isekai'd into Eternal Nations. Only thing is, the only person Atu ever calls king is the ruler of Minagra, the same nation Takuto led back when he was still playing. She speaks again, and this time calls him Takuto-sama. She says he's the first person who ever beat the nightmare difficulty using Minagra, the hardest damn civilization in the game. That put him right at the top of the leaderboards, giving him legendary status. Now Takuto's even more lost. How can a game character know stuff from outside her world? But Atu explains that she remembers it all, every win, every loss, every single word he said to her through the screen, like she lived the whole thing right beside him. That hits Takuto hard. He starts tearing up, telling her how happy he is to finally talk to the one character he always cared about most, and Atu says she feels the same. Still, none of this explains how he ended up here, so Takuto asks if she's the one who brought him into this world. Atu says she's got no clue how they ended up here, since she also showed up in this spot just minutes ago. But there's one thing she's sure of: it all feels exactly like Eternal Nations. No matter where they landed, she's glad they finally met for real. And while holding his hands, she tells him they can start their journey all over again from the ground up. She says she wants to build another empire with him. One where it's just the two of them, and since Takuto's got no other reason to keep going, he decides to share that dream with her. As he reaches out for a handshake, Atu suddenly shifts into full scripted mode, calling herself Sludge Atu, a bastard child of a ruined world, swearing that from now on, her mind and body belong to Takuto. She's supposed to be an evil character, but the whole thing comes off super cliché, and both of them end up a bit embarrassed by it. Still, Takuto plays along, and with a straight face says that he and his right hand Atu will build the most wicked empire ever known, Minagra. Takuto then checks if Atu remembers what their first step should be, and she proudly says they need to lock themselves away like true shut-ins so no outsiders can spot them. To make that happen, Takuto uses an emergency summon to call out a scout, this long-legged creepy bug. Since their nation represents evil and decay, all their units look nasty as hell, and this bug is no exception. Takuto tells the scout to scan the area, and Atu adds that it better not let the king down. The bug listens and crawls off right away. Turns out Takuto can actually see everything the scout sees, and that's when they both realize this world works exactly like the game. He takes a second to explain how the summoning works. His total magic power is 200, and bringing out the scout used up 100 MP. Now he's thinking what to do with the leftover energy. He could use 20 MP to build a base, but part of him wonders if it's better to summon a fighter to guard them. Problem is, that costs way more than what he's got right now. In the original game, Atu's a hero unit, which means she's got serious combat skills, but since they're only just starting out, her power level's sitting at a lowly 3. They move on, and thanks to the scout's report, Takuto gets a pretty clear picture of what's around him, mostly trees stretching out forever. That actually makes it the perfect spot to set up Minagra's base, though Atu thinks it's weird that there's no sign of animals or food anywhere nearby. Since it's too risky to explore, Takuto tells the scout to expand its search even farther just to be safe. Atu suddenly looks down, feeling useless for not helping her king, but Takuto tells her she doesn't need to do anything, just having her beside him is more than enough. That line hits her right in the heart, and she falls for him right then and there. While all that's happening, the scout finds something, a camp full of dark elves hiding out. Takuto starts thinking hard. If he walks into someone else's turf by accident, it's gonna cause trouble, so the smart move is to stay low for now. Atu agrees, saying if things go south, they can always make a run for it, which gives Takuto a little boost to keep watching the elves from afar and figure out what they're doing in this place. But then out of nowhere, 3 dark elves pop up and catch them off guard. Takuto's stunned. The same elves he was hoping to avoid are now standing right in front of him. He and Atu try not to panic, and in moments like this, staying chill is the best play, so that's exactly what they do. Meanwhile, the dark elves have no plans to fight anyone. They got kicked out of their city and were just trying to stay alive, leading everyone they could deep into the forest for safety. After all that struggle, they finally find a spot to rest in this cursed land. But they've got no food left, which means their kids won't survive long. Captain Nagi leads what's left of his forces through the accursed woods, but the fear is starting to show. They're wondering if this whole thing was a waste of time. The land's cursed, and food is nowhere to be found. Some of them start whining that they should have stayed and died in the city, since they're probably gonna drop dead here anyway. They talk about the old rumors that say this forest was cursed by some man, and nothing alive can thrive in it. Nagi shuts them down fast. If they give up now, there's no hope left for the kids waiting behind them. He reminds them that those little ones still believe in them, and they've got no choice but to push forward without turning back. Even while pushing forward, he keeps thinking about what they said, and deep down, he knows they weren't wrong. The odds of surviving out here are pretty much crap. But even if his people are scared and ready to quit, he's still their captain. He has to keep leading no matter what. As he gets closer, he suddenly senses Takuto and Atu's presence, and that freaks him out. He panics, thinking if they get attacked now, it's all over. What he does next could shape the fate of his whole race, so he knows he has to handle this smart. When he shows up, he sees Takuto looking like some kind of dark spirit while Atu looks normal. Nagi instantly drops to his knees, and his group follows. He admits they crossed into forbidden land and had no right to be there. Atu steps forward and demands to know why he came, knowing this place was off limits. Nagi explains everything, how they got kicked out of their city, had no time to prepare, the long trek, and how their starving kids are waiting deep in the woods. He's tense as hell, especially with how cold Atu's stare is. He thinks they're about to get wiped out, but then Takuto asks if he's hungry. Nagi stays quiet, but Atu leans in and tells him to answer her master. So he finally says yes. Right away, Takuto summons a bunch of apples. Nagi's never seen one before and doesn't even know it's food. Takuto tells him they're juicy inside and worth trying. Nagi hesitates, unsure if it's a trap, but when he looks around, his soldiers are already munching away. Atu tells him to eat, but he's still stuck. Then Takuto drops some pears too, and now Nagi starts doubting the guy. Nobody ever treats dark elves with kindness. They're used to getting kicked around, so getting help this easy feels off. He tells Takuto he'd rather take the food back to his kids in the forest. Before he can finish, Takuto drops even more fruit in front of him. Nagi's stunned and grateful. Back in the forest, the kids are barely hanging on, just praying for a miracle. That's when they catch a familiar scent, and it hits them. Nagi and the others are back. Not just back, but loaded with food and something they hadn't had in a while, hope. Nagi tells them to get ready to feast, and everyone starts digging in. The starving kids finally eat, starting to recover. One elf asks Nagi where all this food came from, but he doesn't explain a thing. He just says fate smiled at them, though in his head, he can't stop thinking about that dark figure they met earlier. After the meal, everyone gets some solid sleep, while Nagi stays by the fire, keeping watch and turning thoughts over in his head. That's when Elder Molter steps in and pulls him out of it. He thanks him for everything, but says the fruit tasted like nothing he's had in 200 years. Nagi agrees, says it felt strange when he ate it too. Molter asks where it came from, and Nagi tells him they met a legend in the cursed forest. Says they wandered in and ended up face to face with something unreal. Molter starts to wonder if it was the King of Ruins, that old tale about a shadow showing up when the world's too full, tearing it all down and drowning it in darkness. No one knows if it's real since nobody's ever seen it. Molter asks if Takuto gave that title to himself, but Nagi says the man never introduced himself, just spoke through his maid. Molter says a King of Ruins would never give something for free, then asks what Nagi gave in return. Nagi answers it was nothing, just pure kindness. Molter calls bullshit, says no dark force ever gives without a price. Nagi says he helped them with no catch, calls him the Great One. Molter argues that title doesn't fit someone like the King of Ruin. But Nagi stands firm. The man helped them when no one else would. Nagi wonders if they should have died instead of accepting help. But Molter sighs and says maybe he's right. When the time comes to repay that debt, Molter will do the talking, so no one else needs to worry. Nagi watches his people sleep and wonders when they'll finally rest without fear. At the same time, Atu's furious Takuto wasted mana feeding strangers. She snaps at him, clearly pissed. He tries to say he felt bad for them. She's shocked, reminding him they've got no clue what kind of future awaits Minagra, or how much they'll have to fight. She calls it reckless, then backs off, saying she shouldn't have spoken like that to her king. But Takuto reminds her he can't survive here without her. They're a team. He admits when the elves showed up. He froze, maybe because he's awkward around people. Atu hadn't noticed, thought he was just acting the part, speaking through her like some true king. They tease each other for a bit until his pet returns with the latest report. The next morning, Nagi gets set to go see Takuto again, and Elder Molter stops him, asking if he's really ready to stand before the king. He says since they already took food from the Dark King, they should be ready to pay whatever price he puts on that kindness. Nagi pushes back, says Takuto never asked for anything. But Molter says that's just how things work. Evil doesn't help for free. There's always a catch somewhere. Still, he agrees they've got no choice but to rely on Takuto, since nowhere else is safe for them now. They both head toward Takuto, not knowing his insect scout's been spying on them the whole time. Takuto pulls the bug back to report, and once he finds out the elves are on their way, he just hopes they grab the leftover food and leave without making it awkward. He starts to freak out a little, says he's bad at talking and doesn't know how to deal with this kind of stuff. Atu steps in, says she'll handle it, and reminds him it's better this way. The elves need to see they're not even worthy of speaking to their king. Soon after, Molter and Nagi arrive, and the old elf throws out some fancy greeting, thanking Takuto for the food he gave their people. Then he asks if they can know the name of the one who helped them. With a nod from Takuto, Atu gives them the name, declaring him as the Dark King of Ruin. That hits them hard, confirming every fear they had. Atu then tells them to take the food and move along. It won't last long anyway, so no reason to stick around. But Molter says he wants to give something back for the help they got. He asks what they can offer in return. Atu shuts that down real quick, tells them they probably don't have anything that would please her king, so they shouldn't even try. Then she looks them over and asks if they honestly think they have anything valuable left. Molter hesitates, knowing deep down they've got nothing worth offering. Atu catches that pause and shoots him a cold glare, asking if he's planning something. Molter starts losing it, and Takuto can tell things are going downhill fast. He calls over Atu to talk, and she's clearly not having it, says he's going way too soft. To her, those two clowns don't even know how to negotiate, and if this keeps up, they'll end up dragging him down. She throws out the idea of wiping them all out and lining their heads up on pillars like decorations. Takuto tells her to stop acting like she's about to turn the place into a Halloween attraction. He says the elves clearly want peace, and they're trying to repay him out of respect. He suggests asking for something they can offer instead of handing out food for free. Says that'll keep things balanced between both sides. Atu rolls her eyes but agrees, then turns to the elves and announces that her king will accept their offerings. When Molter's face eases up, both Takuto and Atu realize how nervous he really was. Dude legit thought Takuto was one of those bloodthirsty villains. Atu calls him out for that, but then freezes, not sure what to even ask in return. That's when Takuto gets an idea and tells her to ask them for information about the world outside. Molter lights up and swears he'll tell Takuto everything he's seen and heard out there. Atu nods, then adds that once he's done, he and his people gotta pack up and leave the forest. That hits hard, and both he and Nagi flinch at the order. They say they'd prefer to stay under Takuto's protection, but Atu shuts that down real quick, says if they're serious about surviving, they'd better stop acting greedy. Nagi tries to speak, but Molter shuts him up, says the king gave an order and they're gonna follow it. They start heading off, but Takuto watches them go and feels that not in his gut something about it doesn't sit right. Then he gets an idea and calls out, asking Molter and Nagi to stay and become citizens of his kingdom. They're stunned, but not nearly as much as Atu, who turns to him and asks what the hell he's doing. Takuto reminds her about the refugee system in the game, the one that lets them take in other races as full citizens. Since dark elves are neutral, they'll adjust just fine to the kingdom's dark nature and get along with the other species already living here. Atu's still unsure, saying evil-aligned species tend to clash with each other, but Takuto reminds her that their main race, the homunculi, look like humans who got torn apart and stitched back together all wrong, and there's no way they're hanging around with them forever. That image flashes in Atu's head and creeps her out so bad she agrees immediately. She turns to the elves and says Takuto's building a kingdom right here, and he's willing to take them in as citizens if they swear to serve him. Molter's a bit shaken, asks what that means for them, and Atu lays it out plain they'll become evil beings. But she smirks and tells them being evil's a hell of a lot more fun than it sounds. Not long after, Takuto and Atu make their way to the Dark Elves' camp, where everyone's lined up waiting. The sight of him sends chills down spines, and some of the weaker ones just drop after one look. Takuto sits on his throne, Atu right by his side, and she tells the elves they're now becoming citizens of the Dark Kingdom of Minagra. She checks one last time if Takuto's sure, and when he nods, it's done. The elves are officially in, and Atu welcomes them, saying their survival and safety now rest in their king's hands. Nagi stands there confused, thinking that becoming evil would feel different somehow. Then he says it out loud, and damn near regrets it right away. Hate starts bubbling up in him and the others like a fire, and they start remembering every bit of pain their people ever went through. They want payback, and the two regular elves with them start getting real nervous. Seeing how messed up everyone looks, Takuto quietly asks if they're okay. Nagi can't hold back his tears, realizing for the first time that someone actually cares about him and his people. The Dark Elves begin cheering Takuto's name, crying as they do, and he just sits there, kind of overwhelmed by the whole thing. A few days later, Takuto gets a map of the whole continent from Molter, and the second he sees it, he damn near collapses. Atu asks what's up, and he points at the map, telling her to take a look and see how crap their starting point is. Turns out, they're stuck on a continent already home to two massive overpowered nations. One of them is the Holy Kingdom of Qualia, a human nation worshipping the creator Arlos, and they're pure good-aligned fanatics. Then there's Elna, the Alliance of Elementals, where nature-worshipping elves live, and they're also on the good side. Atu takes one look and freaks out, saying if either side finds out about their kingdom, they're screwed. She drops next to Takuto, but he pulls himself together and says as long as they don't get caught, they've still got time to grow. He reminds her that in the game, their homunculi were dumb as rocks and couldn't research anything, but now that they've got dark elves, they've actually got a shot at getting smarter. Not long after that, the Dark Elves come visit again, and this time Nagi brings along someone new, his assistant Emily. He tells Takuto she's got brains, knows a lot about other kingdoms, and will be way more useful than any of them. Atu nods, says the king's pleased with their efforts, then adds that they'll be stepping into bigger roles now, because it's what Takuto wants. First thing she does is make Molter the head of internal affairs. She says she expects a lot from him, especially since she found out he's got magic under his belt. Then she looks at Nagi and names him head warrior of Minagra, tells him to start building a serious army to keep them safe. She puts full control of recruitment in his hands, and he gets all fired up, shouting about how he'll wipe out their enemies and hang their heads as trophies. Takuto's already grossed out and says that kind of stuff is savage. Atu turns to the confused elf and explains that their king is more into peace than bloodshed, so he better chill. That leaves Nagi scratching his head, wondering why the hell a dark king of ruin would care about peace. Molter smirks and throws a jab, says unlike Nagi's musclehead ass, he's got brains and will actually be useful. That hits Nagi's pride hard, and he fires back, telling Takuto he's young, strong, and can work without breaks if needed, ready to prove he's not just some meathead. Atu has no clue they're just trying to win Big Evil Daddy's attention. She just thinks they're a couple of overworked maniacs. She turns to Takuto and asks if they should throw them a task to gather supplies or something, and he suggests making them clean up the area and build a few homes while they're at it. She passes that on to Molter right away, tells him to gather timber for housing, but to leave most of the forest untouched. Molter nods fast, says it won't be a problem since dark elves are used to living in the woods anyway. Takuto then tells them to regrow the areas they chopped down, but that throws the elves off. They don't know what the word even means. Takuto picks up on it quick, figures their civilization's too behind to even grasp reforesting, so he asks if they at least know about military magic or the 6 major elements. Molter says he's only heard of 4, and Emily says she's never come across any country using something called military magic. Takuto and Atu glance at each other, realizing this world's way more primitive than they expected, but that might be a damn good thing. If they level up their magic tech fast, they can steamroll other nations in no time. Atu takes the chance to explain what reforesting is, says it's when you grow new trees where old ones were cut. The elves say they kinda do that, but not with magic. Atu grins and starts making stuff up, saying reforesting uses 6 elements to speed up the process, then shamelessly gives Takuto credit like he invented it. She keeps hyping him up, says he's the genius behind those tasty fruits they ate, and adds that grapes are her absolute favorite. Emily jumps in too, says she planted some of the grape seeds and a few sprouts already popped up. That surprises Takuto. He didn't think anything would grow in this place. But then it hits him if he can magically recreate earth fruits here. Maybe he can make other stuff too. To test it, he tries creating a coin. And when that works, he realizes he can probably produce things like gunpowder and all kinds of scientific crap. That gives him a serious edge, one that could push his kingdom way ahead of everyone else. At the same time, over in the Holy Kingdom of Qualia, things are heating up too. Saint Selena's out leading a squad of knights through some snowy foothills, dealing with monsters that have been bothering the nearby villages. The second those goblins come charging in, she lifts her staff and torches them to ash with her holy flame. That fire shoots up into the clouds, and once the smoke clears, sunlight hits the scorched earth, and a bunch of flowers pop up. The knight captain turns to his crew, saying that Selena's magic not only burns up nasty monsters, but also leaves a damn flower garden behind. He adds that thanks to her, they've got a good thing going with the elves. Right after that, she tells the cardinal he needs to send paladins south instead, since she got some creepy vision about something going down in the cursed forest. He straight up refuses, saying the forest's all the way at the edge of the continent and he can't make a move without getting the higher-ups involved. Selena says screw that, threatens to head out herself if he won't help. The cardinal tries to push back, but in the end, he gives in and promises to send whatever troops he can round up on his own. Meanwhile, Takuto and Atu are busy building up their turf, starting with new homes for the Dark Elves. They've already got a temporary throne room set up around Takuto's throne, and he's hyped to finally hold meetings and talk shop with his top citizens. Then Molter, Nagi, and Imlay show up, and Atu tells them it's time to kick off their first council meeting. But before they start, Emily hands Takuto a gift, some fresh clothes that make him look like a damn femboy. He's thankful for the outfit since his old stuff's getting pretty nasty, and he thanks the elves for hooking him up. They don't really see much difference, but they trust Atu when she says he looks awesome in it. With that handled, she gets the meeting started, but Takuto's too busy fangirling over himself in the new fit. Atu just rolls with it, runs the meeting herself, and says she'll ask for his input when needed. He's totally cool with that plan. Once the meeting kicks off, Molter asks Atu what kind of buildings they should start throwing up first. She tells him food production's gotta come before anything else, then pulls out this freaky looking plant and says it'll be their main food source for now. The elves look straight up horrified, asking her what the hell it even is. Atu calmly explains it's called the flesh plant, something unique to their civilization. It grows meat that tastes like human flesh, and apparently it's super nutritious. That info doesn't sit right with the elves, who quickly say they don't go around munching on humans. Atu laughs it off, telling them this is just a temporary thing till they get better options growing. Then she says they also need to set up storage buildings and supply sheds near the farms. Emily jumps in and volunteers to handle that part. Next on Atu's list is research, because she says small nations like theirs gotta get smarter if they want to survive. Molter asks what kind of tech they should look into, and she tells him to focus on magic technology. Takuto lights up at the idea, and Molter says he's all in, ready to impress as a mage. He wants to know exactly what to work on, so Atu breaks it down military magic. She explains regular spells only hit a few targets, but advanced combat magic can wipe out whole cities and reshape the battlefield. She tells Molter to gather all the talented elven mages and get cracking on that research. He's fired up about creating magic that's never existed before. Then Atu shifts the convo to military strategy, and Nagi perks up since it's finally his turn. But Takuto shuts it down fast, saying they're not about to dump resources into building a massive army. Atu backs him up, pointing out that armies cost a fortune and don't give anything back when there's no war going on. Nagi pushes back, saying their forces aren't even strong enough to protect Takuto right now. Molter jumps in too, reminding them that both he and Nagi have bounties on their heads, and it's only a matter of time before enemies come knocking. Takuto hears them out and says he's got a better idea. He's gonna create a hero to defend them. Atu agrees, saying heroes might be expensive to summon, but they don't need maintenance, which makes them a damn good deal for where the kingdom's at. The elves have no idea what a hero even is, so Atu breaks it down. Heroes are insanely powerful beings that serve right under the king. She explains there are certain conditions to summon each one, but she's pretty sure they'll be able to summon their first hero soon. Takuto's all fired up about it. He starts thinking about how everything in this world runs on mana, and the only way a kingdom can generate mana is through its people. The happier the people, the more mana they produce, and Takuto swears he's gonna turn his kingdom into the happiest place on the damn planet. Over in the Holy Kingdom of Qualia, a junior paladin named Lornias gets picked to join a team headed to the Cursed Forest. He's got a senior paladin tagging along named Wordle, and that guy's favorite hobby is messing with Lornias, who's always way too stiff and formal. Wordle grumbles that the team's way too small, just 2 paladins and a few hired swords. He says the church should take Selena's warning a lot more seriously. Lornias agrees deep down, but he also knows better than to question the higher-ups. If this mission goes well, they'll be heroes. But if it fails, you can bet your ass all the blame's landing square on him. Back in Minagra, Takuto's checking out how things are going with his kingdom. Seeing it all unfold in front of him hits different. He's used to watching the early stages of his civilization from behind a screen, but now he's living it. Emily gives him the full tour, explaining how dark elves are known for building homes in trees. But right now the construction's going slow because they're putting their energy into growing flesh trees. Those trees are thriving though, and the storage sheds and management facilities are already up and running. She also tells him they found a freshwater spring nearby, and they're working on figuring out how to pull water from it. Over in the new research building, Molter and the other mages are grinding hard on the magic tech stuff. Takuto's happy to hear everything's running smooth, but what gets him even more hyped is knowing the elves are taking initiative, trying to find water and improve things themselves. He mentions how much better they look now compared to when they first arrived back. Then they were tired and broken, but now they look alive. Emily starts tearing up when she hears that, crying right in front of him. Takuto freaks out a little, not sure what to do, but she pulls herself together and keeps the tour going. She takes them over to the flesh tree farm next, saying that thanks to the tools Takuto provided, they're almost ready for their first harvest. Then she shows them the water source the elves found earlier, but the whole vibe around it feels off this time. The water's gone dark, and Emily looks bummed out, thinking it's probably ruined now. Before Atu can step in, Molter and Nagi show up to check it out too. They agree with Imle it looks pretty damn unusable, but Atu walks up, takes a sip without hesitation, and tells them it's perfectly fine to drink. She explains the change is because this area is now part of Minagra, thanks to something called the Cursed Terrain. Takuto tells the elves to take a deep breath, and suddenly they feel clear-headed and full of energy. Atu breaks it down. Cursed terrain boosts beings with evil alignment while weakening neutral or good aligned ones. Since the dark elves are part of Minagra now, they're considered evil, which means this water is totally safe for them. Nagi drinks some himself to confirm it, and Atu adds that pretty soon, the entire forest will be under cursed terrain too. Takuto, though, isn't completely sold. He points out that the terrain change makes the forest look way too obvious. Molter agrees, saying once the whole place turns dark and eerie, enemies will be able to spot them from miles away. Nagi takes this chance to push for building an army again, but Atu and Takuto shut that down, reminding him they've got a hero on the way. Molter still doesn't fully get what a hero even is, so Atu figures it's time for a demonstration. Without warning, she sprouts shadowy tentacles from her back and slices through a bunch of nearby trees like they're nothing. Then she tells them she's a hero herself, and even though this is only 1% of her actual power, she could wipe out entire armies with ease. Takuto proudly tells the stunned elves that heroes are the real deal. They keep leveling up on their own, even if they don't lift a damn finger. But then he scolds Atu for going overboard with the whole tree cutting thing and tells her to clean it up later. The elves, on the other hand, are blown away. They say Takuto must be some legendary figure to have someone like her serving him. They immediately decide to build him a proper palace, but he brushes it off, saying he doesn't need anything fancy right now. The elves insist though, saying their king shouldn't be living in the same wooden homes as them. Atu backs them up too, telling Takuto that building a palace will lift the people's spirits, and that alone makes it worth it. Takuto gives in, telling them he wants a flying fortress someday, but for now a regular palace will do just fine. While that mess is unfolding, the investigation squad led by Lornias and Wordle finally starts making their way south toward the cursed forests. Wordle's still grumbling about how damn tiny their squad is, but Lornias shuts him down, saying this is literally the best the Empire could spare. Most of the military's tied up handling chaos up north after a swarm of evil-aligned creatures showed up out of nowhere, burning towns to the ground and dragging folks off. Every able body got shipped off to deal with that disaster, leaving scraps for anything else. Hearing that, the hired mercs start whispering among themselves, saying whoever got sent north is screwed. Even if the money was tempting, they're glad as hell they didn't pull that job, especially with the rumor going around about some psycho witch being behind it all. They want no part in anything involving witches. Lornia's curious about this rumor, pulls aside one of the mercs, a dude named Bargo, and asks what he knows. Bargo says people are saying a single witch is stirring up all that northern madness, but Lornias doesn't buy it, saying there's no way in hell one person could control that many monsters. Bargo nods fast, saying it's probably some cult crap instead. But then Wordle cuts in, telling Bargo to shut his damn mouth before he jinxes them all. Lornias instantly snaps at Wordle, catching the guy sneaking another drink on the job. He starts chewing him out, reminding him that as paladins serving their gods, so alcohol's off limits. Wordle brushes him off, offering to argue theology right then and there, but loses interest the second a waitress drops off more booze. He starts flirting without a care in the world. Bargo turns back to Lornias, asking why the Empire even bothered sending 2 paladins down this far. He admits he's worried there's another witch involved, and says straight up that if that's true, he and his guys are bouncing before things go sideways. Lornias tells him he doesn't know all the details either, but Wordle jumps in again looking smug as hell. Turns out he squeezed some info from his new waitress friend. Apparently a bunch of dark elves recently ran into the cursed forests, and the higher-ups want someone to keep tabs on them. That puts Bargo at ease, says they'd better deal with those bastards quick. Dark elves are infamous for nasty curses and sneaky assassinations. Lornias agrees completely, saying if they ignore the dark elves now, it's only gonna come back and bite them harder later. But Wordle tells him to chill, reminding him this mission is recon only. If things start going south, they're packing it in and getting the hell out. Lornias, ever the hard-headed holy warrior, says that's not how they roll. If evil shows its face, they crush it, retreats, never on the damn table for a real paladin. Wordle throws a sharp look at Lornias, telling him to quit chasing damn glory and only draw his blade when it actually matters. Not every damn time there's a whiff of danger. He reminds him they've all got folks back home, including him, so they better think twice before throwing their lives away like it's nothing. Back in Minagra, the first batch of flesh tree fruit is finally ripe and stacked high on a huge altar in the middle of town. Takuto stands in front of the pile while the dark elves surround him, eyes glued to the scene, waiting to see what kind of madness their king's about to pull. Without a word, Takuto pumps his mana into the fruit, and right there in front of everyone, it twists and mutates into one massive bug monster. The elves lose it, jaws dropping as they watch him literally bring a creature to life out of thin air. Atu instantly starts hyping him up, shouting that this miracle ain't even 1% of what their king can do. She tells them if they keep worshipping him like they should, he'll grow even stronger and pull off things way crazier than this. The crowd erupts, cheering their king like he's a god. Later on, Takuto slumps back onto his throne, feeling relieved he managed to trade fruit for a monster. It was a standard feature in the old game, but it still blows his mind how any of this actually works in the real world. Atu, chill as always, says screw the logic, they've got a working system now, and they can crank out more creatures to build the kingdom up. She's fired up and says it's time to kick off the next phase. Takuto agrees, saying he'll summon a hero as soon as they've stored up enough mana to do it right. Atu leans in, curious who he has in mind, and he tells her he's thinking of Isla, queen of the bugs. But she nods, saying that's a damn solid call. Takuto gets all into it, explaining Isla's abilities, how she can boost every insect monster they've got, turning the battlefield into a slaughterhouse, and how she can hatch larvae to handle all the boring behind-the-scenes stuff, keeping everything running smooth. Atu grins, glad to see he's not winging it this time, and Takuto admits she was honestly the only sane pick. The rest of the hero pool's full of psychos. Atu laughs, saying those maniacs need 5 years of therapy before they see daylight. Takuto chuckles, saying maybe one day he'll call them up too, but not now. At the same time, Lornias and the crew finally step foot on the Dark Continent, and they barely get a chance to breathe before they run into their first real threat, a massive damn hill giant blocking the path. Lornias jumps straight into action, barking orders at the mercenaries to fall into formation. But Wordle raises a hand, cuts him off, and tells everyone to relax. He says he'll handle this oversized bastard solo, and that they shouldn't waste time trying to help. With everyone watching, Wordle strolls toward the giant like it's no big deal, not even blinking at the thing's ridiculous size, his sword casually in hand. He channels holy energy through his blade, while the hill giant, oddly respectful for a monster, stands there waiting like it's giving him a fair shot. The giant finally swings its club with brutal force, but Wordle blocks it with ease and slices the whole damn thing in half like it's made of paper. Before the beast even realizes what just happened, Wordle flashes forward and unleashes a storm of slashes so fast it doesn't even get a chance to react. The giant drops like a sack of rocks. Wordle turns and walks back calm as ever, like all he did was take a quick morning jog. Lornias can't hold back his excitement, calling Wordle a damn beast and saying this mission's practically wrapped now that he's around. But the look on Wordle's face shuts that down quick. His serious stare brings the whole squad back to reality, and even Lornias starts to feel uneasy. Meanwhile, back in Minagra, Takuto's chillin' with a burger, enjoying the hell out of it, while Atu gives him a light scolding for not eating something better. Takuto grins, telling her he's spent way too long in hospitals surviving off tasteless meals, and now he's treating himself to the world of greasy heaven. Then he starts getting concerned that Atu's been living off salads for days, but she just smiles and says this is exactly what works for her. They kick back and talk about how construction's been going crazy fast lately, until something clicks in Takuto's head. He tells Atu to gather Molter and the others once they're done eating, since the new scout bugs finished mapping the nearby terrain. He says he's ready to deal with a human town they discovered close to the border, but first asks Atu to double-check if the place falls under the Holy Kingdom of Qualia. She thinks it's independent, which is a huge relief for Takuto. It means they might be able to handle things without a fight. He stays hopeful they can talk it out without shit going sideways, and Atu immediately teases him for jinxing it. Takuto laughs, saying there's no way something that wild's gonna happen. But right then, one of the scout bugs delivers a high-priority alert. An armed group's heading straight for their forest. Takuto's whole vibe changes on the spot. He tells Atu they'll try to keep things peaceful if they can, but if it turns ugly, they better be ready to throw down. At the same time, the armed group marching into the forest is none other than Lornia's and Wordle's crew. As they move deeper, Wordle suddenly throws up a hand, telling everyone to hold up. He's picked up on something or someone heading their way. Moments later, Atu steps out from the trees, dressed in shadowy clothes that make it impossible to recognize her. Wordle immediately asks who she is, and she calmly says she's a dark elf who came here with her people, because they've got nowhere else left to go. Wordle nods slightly, acknowledging her reason, but straight up tells her they've got orders to investigate this forest, so she needs to step aside. Atu firmly refuses and says they shouldn't go any deeper, which instantly sets off red flags in Wordle's mind. But before he can dig further, Lornias butts in, barking at Atu, demanding how she dares stand in the way of someone serving God. Wordle spins around and tells him to shut the hell up and quit making a scene. Lornias looks pissed, shocked that Wordle snapped at him over something he sees as minor. But Wordle doesn't even flinch, turns right back to Atu, saying they can't leave just because she tells them to, then asks straight up if there's something hidden in this forest. Atu stays calm and says there's nothing here but elves who want to live in peace, then asks why they're so damn determined to come charging into this cursed forest. Wordle stays quiet for a second, then lets out a sigh and finally explains the truth. The Saintess recently had a vision. She saw a powerful evil hiding in this place, and Wordle says he's not leaving until he sees for himself if it's real. The mercenaries around them freeze, shocked out of their minds. They hadn't heard a word about this vision before now. Lornias damn near explodes, demanding to know how Wordle could drop something that big without warning, like it's some tavern gossip. Wordle fires back, saying there are times when you need to speak the truth out loud. But Lornias looks like he's about to pop a vein, yelling that Wordle's way out of line, and even a top-tier paladin doesn't get to reveal divine prophecies without permission from above. But then Wordle politely asks Atu if they can at least take a quick look around inside, trying to keep things from spiraling. That's when her whole vibe suddenly flips. She coldly tells them there's absolutely nothing inside worth wasting their precious time on. Her tone sharpens as she urges them to turn back now. Lornia's already on edge, loses it. He's furious that some dark elf would dare talk down to a divine mission. The air around Atu grows heavy, her presence turning dark, and Lornia's is now convinced that something wicked is hiding in those woods. Wordle, though, still seems open to talk, trying to calm things down. He asks her to swear on her own god that nothing in the forest threatens the holy kingdom of Qualia. Without flinching, Atu swears by her deity, even saying they fear Qualia far more than Qualia should ever fear them. That's enough for Wordle, says they're done here, officially calling off the mission. Lornia's is stunned, completely blindsided, and immediately protests. He insists it's obvious she's hiding something big, but Wordle fires back, calling him a paranoid coward who's letting his fear speak louder than his faith. He says they've seen nothing worth fighting over, and that ends the investigation. With that, Wordle turns and walks away without hesitation. But Lornia's finally snaps, says Wordle's gone too far, and announces he's stripping him of command for spilling divine secrets to the enemy and bailing on his sacred duty. Then he orders the mercenaries to follow him deeper into the forest to uncover whatever evil's hiding in there. Bargo jumps at the order. After all, Lornia's is the one signing his checks, and arguing with your boss doesn't pay well. Atu pleads with them one last time to back off, but Lornia's doesn't even glance at her. He coldly tells his men to seize her, even as Wordle yells at him not to push things any further. Atu sighs quietly, knowing this was the end of diplomacy. And then it happens. In a flash, the mercenaries are impaled by her spikes, turned into human shish kebabs before they even realize what's going on. Lornia's takes a brutal hit to the head and blacks out, never knowing what struck him. The only one left standing is Wordle, wide-eyed and shaken, shouting that they're not just up against some elf, she's a damn witch. Then Atu calmly steps forward, dropping her disguise and saying it's a shame things had to end like this. Peace was never really an option. Turns out more of them are still breathing. So Wordle yells for someone to hurry and report this back to the kingdom. But Bargo cuts him off, says all their messengers were already wiped out by Atu, and the mercenaries who barely survived aren't quick enough to outrun her now, especially with Atu ready to rip anyone apart. Wordle calls everyone to arms because at this point, they've got no choice but to fight. He orders the mercenaries to fire everything they've got, so they unload all their arrows straight at Atu. But she deflects every single shot without breaking a sweat, leaving her completely untouched. Meanwhile, the last thing Wordle wanted was to get tangled up with someone as dangerous as Atu, and she's just as irritated as he is. Atu makes it crystal clear this is all on Lornia's, because she would have gladly let them walk if they just backed off from the forest peacefully. But Lornia's had to act all righteous, forcing her to kill him now. Lornia's finally gets how badly he messed things up, so he's ready to listen and turns to Wordle, asking if he has any idea what Atu actually is. Wordle admits he had a hunchback when they first met her. That's exactly why he wanted to avoid this fight. But now that he's seen her real form up close, he's absolutely sure Atu must be a witch. A witch is a calamity-class monster, officially recognized as a threat on a national level, and Atu's clearly too powerful for these mercenaries to even touch. So Wordle tells the rest to hang back, since this is something only he and Lornia's can handle. They both rush forward, chanting their prayers to power up their attacks, and at first, Atu doesn't think they're even worth taking seriously, so she casually blocks their hits and mocks their weakness. But to her surprise, they actually slice through 2 of her tentacles, proving this fight isn't gonna be as easy as she thought. Realizes their holy magic gives them bonus damage against her, and Wordle figures out that once they've cut off all her tentacles, she'll be totally helpless. Atu can't let that happen, so she grabs 2 mercenaries, using them as human shields to force Wordle and Lornia's to back down. But Wordle immediately tells Lornia's that if they don't finish Atu here, there's a real chance she'll target Qualia someday, so for the good of their entire nation, sacrifices have to be made. Lornia's hates it, but deep down he knows Wordle's right, so both of them charge ahead anyway, slicing straight through the hostages and taking Atu's last 2 tentacles along with them. Atu's surprised they're willing to kill their own people that easily, and for a brief moment it honestly looks like she might actually be in trouble. But turns out this was just a game for her from the start. Seconds later, a bunch of tentacles shoot up from the ground and impale Wordle multiple times. With the last breath he's got, Wordle yells at Lornia's to run away, but before Lornia's can even move, Atu finishes Wordle off with one last tentacle right through his head. Lornia's can't even process what's happening, because he was certain they'd cut off all of Atu's tentacles. But even though that's true, Atu doesn't recall ever saying she couldn't just grow more whenever she wanted. In fact, she could summon as many tentacles as she felt like this entire time, so she's been playing around with them from the beginning. After watching their leader die like that, every mercenary instantly loses their will to fight, and Atu clearly isn't feeling generous enough to spare anyone. Lornias realizes this quickly, tells them all to scatter immediately, hoping if they run in different directions, at least one might survive long enough to report everything back to the kingdom. Without wasting time, all the mercenaries instantly drop their weapons and run for their lives, and Atu doesn't really feel like chasing after them, so she simply lets them go. Honestly, she wishes they'd done that from the start, because it would have saved everyone a whole lot of trouble. Lornias stays behind to keep Atu occupied, so he swings his holy sword straight at her. But to his total shock, she effortlessly blocks the strike using the exact same holy sword technique. Lornias doesn't understand how an evil creature like Atu could possibly use holy skills, since normally that'd be impossible. But when Atu killed Wordle earlier, she didn't just absorb his experience and sword techniques, she actually became just as skilled as he ever was. Atu immediately starts attacking Lornias with Wordle's techniques, openly praising Wordle because he truly was worthy of being called elite. Unfortunately for Wordle, he's dead now, and that's entirely Lornias' fault because he couldn't keep his damn mouth shut. Atu then casually mentions if Lornias even thought about whether he'd make it back home safely to his wife and daughter. But Lornias never said a word about his family here, and that's exactly when it dawns on him that Atu didn't just absorb Wordle's skills, she took all his memories too. And if Atu's truly capable of something like that, it means she'll only keep getting stronger every time she kills someone. She calmly asks Lornias if he wants to hear Wordle's final thoughts before she ended him. Because Wordle was such a good man, he spent his last moments thinking only about the safety of his men. But Atu says the same can't be said about Lornias. He tries defending himself, claims at least some mercenaries made it out to report what happened, so their mission wasn't a total failure. But Atu coldly tells him those mercenaries are already dead. Sure, she didn't feel like chasing them down herself, but that didn't mean she'd let them leave alive. And she never said she came alone. She'd already given clear instructions to the Dark Elves to ensure nobody escapes alive, so the moment those mercenaries fled, they were immediately hunted down and killed. Lornias falls into complete despair, realizing he's now the last survivor. So he desperately swings his sword toward Atu's head, and she enjoys every bit of his suffering. It doesn't take long before Atu effortlessly subdues him. And before killing him, she decides to twist the knife deeper by telling Lornias exactly how things would have turned out if he'd simply listened to Wordle. They would have all returned safely, Lornias would have reunited with his wife and daughter, and everyone would have lived happily without ever knowing about the calamities in the forest. But Lornias chose differently, so now Atu's going to kill him, and not just him. She says his family's next, then casually adds that reading his mind makes it easy to picture his wife and daughter, even know exactly where they live. Openly admits she's definitely petty enough to do something like that. In fact, Atu might as well slaughter everyone in all the villages Lornias passed through on his way here. And while they're all dying in absolute agony, she'll make sure every single one of them knows it's entirely Paladin Lornias' fault. Lornias screams desperately, begging Atu not to do it, but she's starting to get bored with tormenting him, so she finally stops taunting him and kills him outright to shut him up. Once Lornias is dead, Nagi calmly approaches Atu and informs her that he and his men have successfully killed every mercenary who ran away, so nobody will be reporting any of today's events. Atu thanks him for his good work, then casually asks him to take care of disposing of the bodies as well. Right before she leaves, Nagi stops Atu, says there's something he wants cleared up first. Needs to know if she actually plans on going through with killing Lornias' family and every person he ever spoke to. Atu just shrugs it off, admits she only said all that stuff to mess with Lornias' head, so of course she isn't planning on committing genocide. Besides, she genuinely prefers peace anyway, and killing all those people sounds exhausting as hell. Fighting isn't something she enjoys unless it's absolutely necessary. Either way, she can't waste any more time chatting here, since there's something important she needs to discuss with Takuto right away. Soon after, Atu tells Takuto that right before the battle began, Wordle called her a witch even though she's officially classed as a hero, and he even mentioned something about another witch somewhere up north. Takuto says he's never once heard of a witch class in the game before, so Atu figures this world must be completely different from the one they're used to. Takuto already suspected as much. and even though most game mechanics still seem pretty familiar, it'd be smarter to assume the core systems have changed somehow. Fortunately, not all the changes are bad news. A2's skill absorption power improved significantly. Now she can also obtain bits of memories from anyone she kills, and thanks to that upgrade, she was able to gather plenty of useful information about Qualia's current situation directly from the investigation squad they just wiped out. Luckily, the city of Qualia appears heavily preoccupied by the disturbance up north, meaning they won't have the resources to turn their full attention towards Minagra anytime soon. Still, the fact that the investigation squad suddenly vanished without a trace is bound to raise suspicion, forcing Qualia to take at least some action to figure out exactly what happened here. Takuto fully realizes that, but Qualia currently knows nothing about Minagra's existence, so as long as the leaders aren't complete idiots, he doubts they'll launch an attack right away. At the moment, he's far more concerned about whatever's going on with the northern disturbance and that which causing all the trouble. Atu already tried digging around in Wordle's memories for any additional info about witches, but unfortunately Wordle himself didn't know all that much. However, his memories did make one thing extremely clear. That witch up north was powerful enough to single-handedly inflict military-level damage on the Qualian army, and her name is Irakino. At the same time, up in the northern territory, Irakino has just wiped out another village, and she's already preparing to move on to the next. Before she does, she reanimates all the villagers she killed and turns them into undead servants under her control. Takuto has no idea what her full abilities are, but the amount of damage she's caused in such a short time makes him suspect she might have come from another world too, just like him and Atu. If that's true, things are about to get a whole lot messier, so Atu asks him what their next move should be. Judging by the way she operates, Irakino's probably evil-aligned, so there's a chance they could get along with her. Atu asks if they should try reaching out, but Takuto doesn't think that's a smart move since they know nothing about her personality. Atu's clearly frustrated that all this chaos had to show up right when things were starting to go smoothly. But Takuto reminds her Irakino's still way up north, so they probably won't have to deal with her directly for a while. Even so, with threats like this popping up, it's obvious Minagra needs stronger defenses, so Takuto plans to create another hero as soon as possible. He was originally going to choose Ayla, but after everything that's happened, he might need someone more suited for combat. He's also starting to rethink his strategy of staying hidden, because with unpredictable factors like this witch out there, they'll need to build an alliance with another nation eventually. Qualia's out of the question after what Atu did to their paladins, but the country east of the forest could be a good fit. They're neutral and haven't made contact with Minagra yet, but once the palace construction is finished, Takuto plans to head over there, check things out, and see if there's any chance of forming a proper partnership. At the same time, over in the eastern city, they're dealing with an attack from the barbarians, but their staff bearer quickly wipes them out with a bolt of lightning. The citizens cheer and praise her for saving the city so easily, but she tells them it's too early to celebrate, there's still a lot of work ahead. Back in Minagra, Atu and Takuto finish their conversation, and just as she's about to leave, she pauses for a second, says there's something she needs to apologize for. She knows Takuto isn't a fan of unnecessary violence, but admits she got a little carried away with the paladin. Takuto just stares at her and asks why he'd care. That moment hits Atu with a quiet reminder Takuto might seem kind on the surface, but deep down, he's still the embodiment of evil, and there's not much in this world that could ever bother him. In no time, Takuto's palace is finally complete, and that moment marks the start of his kingdom's push forward in earnest. He is excited because he has always wanted a giant palace, and Atu says one day it will be big enough to pierce the heavens, a promise she makes with calm certainty. All that palace talk makes Atu notice that even though Takuto is their king, he still has no attendant at all, not a single person at his side. However, he had not thought about it much. But a king without personal servants is odd, so Atu asks if he has any preference so she can find one for him right away. Takuto, a bit sheepish, says anyone who is easy to talk to will do, since he is a terrible communicator who stumbles over small talk. In fact, he has not actually held a conversation with any of the Dark Elves since he arrived, and Atu figures that is because he comes across as a mass of negative energy to them, more shadow than man. Even so, she tells him not to worry because she has the perfect plan ready to go. Takuto does not love how fired up she is, but he lets it play out to see what she does next, keeping his doubts to himself. Right after, Atu summons Nagi, Molter, and Emlane, and orders them to gather all the young girls in the village because Takudo desires them. Her tone brisk and absolute. Both Takudo and Molter are stunned where they stand, but Molter still wants to give him the benefit of the doubt, so he asks Atu why she gave that order at all. Atu says she asked for young girls because she thought it would be easier for Takudo to practice conversations with them. Yet instead of putting it that way, she boldly declares that Takudo is into young girls. This goes way too far, so Takudo cuts her off before it spreads and tells her to explain the plan without turning him into the neighborhood creep. After the full explanation, Molter and the others are relieved to learn that Takudo only wanted an attendant who would be easy to talk to, and the reason he pointed to young girls is that the kingdom is short on hands, and he did not want to pull valuable laborers away to be servants, so children who cannot work yet were the best options for now. Molter and the rest are impressed by how much thought Takudo put into it, so they agree to bring the children. And Takudo looks forward to finally having people he can talk to each day in the palace. But only one thing he didn't think about remains in the way. To regular folks he keeps coming off as a walking disaster, which makes the kids burst into tears the second they see him. Takudo feels torn up over that whole mess with the kids, so Atu turns to Molter to see whether there is a single child who would not scream at the sight of the king, and given how things stand, Molter cannot name anyone suitable. Then Nagi cuts in and asks if Takudo has met the twins yet, and he admits he kept them off the list because their past carries serious baggage, so he worried they might cross a line with the king. But at this point, options are thinning out, so Atu tells him to bring them in anyway. A short while later, the twins step into the palace and introduce themselves as Karia and Maria, and Karia carries herself with crisp respect, while Maria talks to Takudo casually, treating him as one of the homies. At a glance, Otto reads the history on their faces, so she asks Karia about the sores scattered across her body. Karia says they trace back to an illness, and then Molter fills in the gap and explains that a plague hit her some time ago, so the cure held, yet the scars it left never faded. After that, Atu shifts to Maria's situation, so Karia explains that her sister went through something brutal, and after that day she never truly came back to who she was. Atu presses for what brutal means, and Maria answers without a pause that she ate her mother. That is far worse than what Atu feared, so she turns to Molter for the story, and he says he is not proud of those days. Yet at the time there was no other path. The Dark Elf tribe still honors the mother of Karia and Maria for the sacrifice she made for her people. Hearing that, Takudo recalls the exile the elves endured, and it was a long trek over vicious ground after losing their home. So in stretches like that, hunger becomes an enemy on its own, and hard choices fall on those who want everyone to live long enough to reach safety. Being forced to eat her own mother shattered the way Maria sees the world, so her sense of fear bent into something else, which explains why Takudo does not scare her at all. Atu hesitates about naming Maria as an attendant, and the risk feels real, so she weighs that thought in silence. During that pause, Maria walks up to Takudo, and once she stands near him, she says he looks white to her. That catches Takudo off guard because most people call him the shape of darkness itself. Yet Maria reads something different, so he asks whether she is willing to serve as his attendant and look after him, and Maria says she will do her best, so Takudo appoints her on the spot as his servant and as a candidate for leadership within Minagra. Atu is taken aback because this ends up being the longest stretch of talk Takudo has shared with anyone besides her. Yet even if Maria seems on board, Karia stays quiet, so Takudo asks what she makes of his offer, and Karia says that as Maria's younger sister she has a duty to stay at her side all the time. So if Maria wants to serve as Takudo's attendant, then she will step into the role as well. That settles Takudo for the moment because he needs steady help, so he tells them that starting today they are responsible for looking after him. Then Nagi and Molter trade uneasy looks since the choice still feels risky. After everyone else steps out, Molter circles back to Takudo because there is something he has to share about the twins. Ever since their mother died, they have not been able to feel even a shred of emotion. So it is as if their hearts sealed shut and nothing gets through. Taking them on will bring its own problems, so Molter asks Takudo to meet those moments with patience and tolerance until the girls begin to open up again, since forcing it will only push them further inside. The following day, Maria and Karia begin their official duties as Takudo's attendants, and trouble shows up right away because Maria walks in with a glass of water, trips over her own feet, and dumps the whole thing on Takudo. Karia moves fast and offers to wipe him down, and she apologizes for the mistake since this is not the first time it has happened. So Takuto tells her he is not upset and that accidents are part of learning. A few moments later Atu comes in, and she is disappointed to see that Maria has slipped up again. So Takuto asks her to ease up on the girls for now. Atu hates how often they fumble. Yet if Takuto does not want to punish them, she will let it slide. Then she reminds him that he has a meeting to attend, and as his attendants Maria and Karia are required to come along as well, so they had better hold it together and keep their manners sharp. The meeting starts shortly after, and Imle is the first to report since she runs the construction department. So she explains that with the palace wrapped up, they now have a lot of workers freed up, and they also have a large stock of materials sitting in storage, which means they can roll into another project soon. Takuto and Atu back Emily's assessment, so they greenlight a clinic right away because Minagra needs a steady way to protect the health and safety of its people, and Emily says she will move on it immediately so crews can break ground without delay. Now that construction is squared away, Atu asks to hear from whoever is handling resource collection so they can lock in supply before the next phase of growth. It turns out Emily runs that portfolio as well, so they may need to bring in more staff soon to keep both tracks moving. She reports that gathering food and raw materials is going smoothly, and thanks to Takuto's support they have been securing daily necessities they cannot produce on their own, because his power covers gaps that would otherwise stall progress. That drain on his mana is heavy, so they have to map out other ways to obtain those items soon, since leaning on emergency production so often is not ideal. For now it counts as a necessary expense, so Takuto tells her to keep relying on him, and at the same time they will prioritize buildings and research that raise his mana output so the burden eases over time. Atu thanks Emily for the grind and shifts the room to magic research. Then Molter rises to give his report. He explains that he has successfully built a line of military magic, and at the moment he is the only one who can use it. Yet with enough training his subordinates should be able to follow his lead. They may even be able to harness the ruined mana that the palace throws off to push stronger casts, so the ceiling could end up higher than anyone expected. Since Takuto has made it clear he does not want to start wars, chances to deploy those spells will probably stay rare. For now, Atu asks Molter to pour his effort into the 6 major elements on the magic skill tree, because those will do the most for national development. Finally, she calls on Nagi for an army status update. So he explains that the force currently fields 5 scout bugs. Most of their hours go into mapping the uncharted stretches of the accursed land, and the ground beyond the forest is mostly open plains, so they can range there with a lower chance of being spotted. Since stealth sits at the top of Minagra's priorities right now, the scouts have to keep their footprints small. Atu brushes it off because they already have a complete survey of the entire forest. So she tells Nagi to assign the scout bugs to routine patrols around the perimeter of the forest. Nagi checks whether she truly wants all of them on patrol duty, and Atu can read the worry about their military strength, so she says she alone can handle whatever shows up. Plus she and Takuto already settled on creating a new hero, and Takuto says he will summon Ayla after all. Takuto then asks whether the team gathered every resource needed for that plan, and Molter reports that the lumber and the rations are ready and waiting. Yet the heavy mana cost still stands. After a lot of arguing and some compromise, the meeting wraps as planned, and Takuto feels satisfied with how well everyone has been playing their part. After that he heads toward the throne room, and as he is walking Maria bumps into him and scatters the meeting papers across the floor. Karia apologizes for her and moves to help pick the pages up. Then they accidentally tear one of the documents in half while trying to gather it. Both sisters look up at Takuto expecting anger, and he simply tells them it is fine and goes to sit on his throne. Maria suddenly steps closer and asks if he is a bad person. His alignment is evil, so in strict terms he counts as a bad person, and she follows by asking why he has not killed them yet. They keep messing up and doing things that would normally get a servant executed. Yet Takuto keeps sparing them, and they cannot make sense of that. Takuto asks them to spell out the difference between a good person and a bad person. And in Maria's view, a good person does nothing but good while a bad person does nothing but bad. But Takuto says she's only half right. Then he lays down his side clearly. A good person has to stay on the right path every time, so lying, stealing, or killing without cause is out of bounds, and that's the standard he's talking about. From there, he flips the coin to the other side. A bad person doesn't have to cause harm every minute. They move on selfish wants and act without caring about anyone else. and in his case he wants to be kind to them. So being lenient when they mess up isn't a problem. Plus, he already knows they've been messing up on purpose from the start to try to make him angry. Maria and Karia confess they were pushing Takuto's buttons on purpose so he would end them, because they do not feel worthy of living after what went down. Takuto gets why forgiving themselves feels out of reach, and he cannot truly walk in their shoes. Yet he is sure their mother gave herself up so they could keep going. He tells them they are free now, and the best way to honor her is to live all the way so her sacrifice is not wasted. And he says it steady so it actually lands. Moving on will be hard, but he promises he will be there with them step by step and not leave them hanging. They burst into tears at the kindness and cling to him. Then hours later, Atu walks in and finds both girls asleep on his throne. She feels a small twinge of jealousy over how close they are to him, but business comes first. So she lets it go and says the report on the nearby city is done and ready to share. The city is called Dragonton, and it is part of the neutral multiracial nation called Fonkaven, which means many races share its streets and markets. Since the place is mixed, Takuto figures talks should go smoothly and fairly, yet he is bothered that Dragonton sits way out in a remote corner far from easy support and quick relief. Atu explains it sits that far out because there is a dragon vein mine, and dragon veins generate mana on their own. So she suggests moving to secure it fast before anyone else does or the window closes. The report also says Dragonton is taking hits from barbarians such as ogres and goblins, and the defenders are barely holding the line, which raises the stakes for everyone involved. Takuto asks if Dragonton's gotten any help from back home, and Atu says no reinforcements have shown up so far, so things aren't getting better and could get worse if nothing changes. Seeing the situation, Takuto figures there's gotta be refugees out there, and if Minagra takes them in, the headcount goes up while they lock in a real tie with Dragonton at the same time, helping both sides right away and down the road. Then before long, they could stake a claim on the Dragon Vein mine for themselves. Takuto tells Atu to arrange an envoy at once, and while they head toward the city, Atu's party runs into a band of beastkin out in the open country, basically the middle of nowhere, and the tension spikes hard. The beastkin leader Tonokopoli is frightened by Atu and the rest, since a mass of darkness clings to them so thick it's visible to the naked eye. She keeps pushing for calm, because her men are petrified enough to lash out at the pair out of fear, and that kind of panic could get them all killed right there on the spot. Atu is still under strict orders to keep Minagra out of sight, so she starts getting ready to erase every witness on the spot. Even so, Pepe here is too dense to grasp the danger Atu represents. He casually asks her name and drifts into small talk, a move so bold and foolish it throws Atu off for a beat, and she shelves the killing for the moment. In the end, the two sides manage to reach an understanding, and Atu finds out Tonokopoli's group is actually an envoy from Dragonton. That turns out to be a lucky break, since it saves her the trouble of making the trip herself. So she invites Tonokopoli and her men to come meet the king of Minagra in person. Tonokopoli is a bit rattled, since any king who can command someone as powerful as Atu has to be terrifying. When she finally meets Takuto, it's worse than she pictured, because all she can see is an endless abyss of darkness without end. Now she's starting to regret the choice she made before, second-guessing herself and wishing she had played it safer. Before they crossed paths with Atu, the group was attacked by a giant in the barren lands. But Pepe, as one of the staff bearers, used grass magic to locate the giant and slam it to the ground with force. Sadly, with brain power in the single digits, he doesn't finish it off. He climbs on top and starts demanding praise for his magic from everyone around. As expected, the giant eventually tears free and tosses Pepe to the ground. But right as it is about to crush him, Tonokopoli rushes in and uses both grass and earth magic to pin the giant tight against a rock. Tonokopoli smacks Pepe across the head and tells him to quit acting like an idiot, because as the only young staff bearer, one day people's lives will ride on his choices. Pepe says he'll give it his best, yet it's obvious he doesn't grasp how serious his role is. If Dragonton keeps getting hit by giants, it's only a matter of time before the place is wiped out, and they still have no clue what's stirring it up. The lone lead is a rumor about a calamity showing up in the accursed lands, so Tonokopoli says she plans to check it out and drill some responsibility into Pepe. She drags him along, and now she's kicking herself for it, because a single wrong move from him could get the whole team killed. Moments later, Pepe pipes up out of nowhere and asks Takudo to be friends, and Tonakapali is losing it because speaking straight to a king that boldly can be enough to get a person executed. She apologizes and tries to cover for Pepe's outburst. But to her shock, Takudo genuinely looks pleased at the idea and says he'd be happy to get along with him. Next, a feast is set to welcome Pepe and Tonakapali's party, and once everyone settles in, Maria and Karia pour out apple juice for them. Tonakapali takes a sip and is blown away, since she's never tasted anything this good, and the glass itself is top tier, finer than anything the finest craftsman on the continent could turn out. Pepe is all over the juice too, so he asks Maria for another round, and before that extra serving even lands, he pops up from his chair and starts praising Nagi's massive muscles, says your arm is bigger than my butt. Then he goes to show off his magic to Molter, and nobody stops him, since Takudo seems to have taken a liking to the kid. Takudo is impressed by how social Pepe stays no matter the setting, and he's glad they managed to become friends, but he's never actually had a friend before, so he isn't exactly sure what friends are supposed to do. While Pepe is busy getting scolded by Tonakapali, Takudo catches his eye and asks if he'd like to play a game. The room goes quiet for a beat because no one saw that coming, and Takudo starts to feel awkward. Right then Pepe agrees with a smile, so the two sit down together. They start with a game Pepe invented, so each of them takes a single blade of grass and they tug against one another to see which strand snaps first. Tonakapali worries Takudo might take offense at a pastime this simple, yet he ends up laughing and having a genuinely good time. They keep going for a while, and Pepe tries a handful of games Takudo created, says he had tons of fun, and even suggests Takudo could sell these in Dragonton. Then Tonakapali cuts him off, saying it isn't Pepe's place to make calls of that sort. For his part, Takudo is pleased the topic of trade surfaced, since he plans to set up commerce with Dragonton. Yet before that, he needs to set aside his new friendship with Pepe and carry himself strictly as a ruler. After the meal wraps up, Atu gets Tonakapali's attention and asks why she came to the accursed lands to begin with. The query puts her on edge, but she answers that her country has been under constant assault from the barbarians. Atu is a bit surprised that those tribes are the ones striking Dragonton, since they usually avoid large cities, and Tonakapali says that's precisely why she's here to investigate what could be pushing them into this behavior. Takudo asks whether that means they lack the military strength to fight the barbarians effectively, and Tonakapali's blood pressure jumps, since if he learns how dire Dragonton's situation is, Minagra might try to conquer them instead of negotiating. She claims Dragonton still has enough power to drive the barbarians off, while the strange pattern of their movements needs study regardless. Her case convinces everyone there that Dragonton can handle itself. Then Pepe blurts out that he's confused, since a little while ago Tonakapali told him they were here, because if they don't figure out why the barbarians are attacking, Dragonton will be doomed. Atu starts to feel for Tonakapali, having to wrangle Pepe non-stop. Yet she and Takudo make it plainly clear they mean Dragonton no harm, so she doesn't need to worry. For the moment they're wrapped up in their own domestic affairs, which means no plans to launch wars or seize other nations anytime soon. As for the barbarians, that can't be brushed aside or left alone, because if Dragonton falls to them, then as the nearest kingdom Minagra would likely be next in line, so the threat lands on their doorstep as well, whether they want it or not. Tonakapali is taken aback and asks if they will step in with support, since Dragonton overextended itself building a town by the Dragon Vein and will collapse if nothing changes. Atu turns to Takudo for the call, and he says he wants to back his friend, offering whatever aid is needed without holding back. Tonakapali brightens, then asks what he expects in return, given Pepe already made clear that Dragonton is in rough shape and short on options. Atu answers without hesitation, they want the Dragon Vein. Tonakapali had hoped that wouldn't come up, yet in the current situation she can't push back at all or set conditions. Atu adds that there's no need to panic, since she and Takudo are fine with joint control of the Dragon Vein with Dragonton. In short, they don't need much mana right now, but they want sole authority over choosing the elemental conversion from the Dragon Vein and keeping that choice exclusive to Minagra. Tonakapali is floored to learn Minagra already has the tech to convert raw mana into elemental power, something that would take Dragonton another 10 years to nail down and polish to completion. It's obvious now that Minagra stands far ahead as a civilization, so an alliance would pay off massively for them in every practical sense. Even so, tradition says the decision is Pepe's. He may be an idiot, but he's the youngest staff bearer and by extension, the future ruler of the nation. He's also sharp at reading people, so she asks whether he wants to proceed with the alliance, and Pepe says he wants to be friends with everyone in Minagra. With that, the two kingdoms make the alliance official then and there, sealing the agreement between them. A short time later, Adu convenes a meeting to spell out the terms of their arrangement with Dragonton. Minagra will ship consumables to their city on a steady basis, and in exchange, Dragonton will deliver metal goods and day-to-day supplies in return. Molter is pleased with the agreement, since up to this point they've depended on Takudo to furnish those items and keep them flowing. But the biggest win by far is access to the Dragon Vein. They have Pepe to thank for how smoothly it played out, because if he hadn't revealed Dragonton's true condition, then Tanukapali would have kept up her facade of confidence, and they probably wouldn't have made any real progress on foreign ties. On top of that, Dragonton would have been destroyed long before Minagra could step in with aid. So Takudo starts wondering whether Pepe is really an idiot, or if he steered things on purpose to land the best outcome. Moving forward, Atu suggests they talk through how to handle relations with Dragonton from here on in. Maria and Karia, a bit adrift, ask whether anyone even knows what kind of country Dragonton is. They were so locked in on the talks that they forgot they had never set foot there, not once, and a major piece of sustaining foreign ties is knowing an ally's culture and values beyond the paperwork. Back when Takudo used to play the game, he only had to press a button to set friendly status, so it never occurred to him that he would actually need to put in the work to maintain an alliance now. Since they know so little, Atu proposes that the first step be to survey the capital crescent moon, but it sits a long way from Minagra, so a proper look would take a while and eat up time. Takudo says they can park that for the moment, because the top priority is helping Dragonton beat back the giants. Still, Molter notes that visiting a foreign nation isn't something they can do on a whim. There are protocols and formal rules they need to follow. Maria and Karia raise their hands and ask if it would be fine to go there just to have some fun, and childish or not, it's a solid plan. If they frame it as a friendly call before dispatching an official delegation, they can set out right away without delay. Molter then steps up to go, but Takudo figures he's a bit too senior to send as a messenger to the other nation. Molter would basically read as Minagra's top magic chancellor, so that's a hard no. The same goes for Nagi and Emlea. Since their posts carry equal weight, they need someone Takudo trusts who isn't ranked that high. Right then, Maria and Karia lift their hands to volunteer. Takudo shuts the idea down immediately because he's worried it could be dangerous, and Ado offers to take the trip instead, but Molter reminds her she's Takudo's most trusted confidant, which makes her practically the most important person here after Takudo himself. At that point, Maria and Karia walk up to Takudo and remind him he gave them the freedom to make their own choices. So right now they want to do everything they can to help him, even if there's risk involved. Takudo is reluctant to approve sending them, but he can't bring himself to say no to faces like that. So in the end he agrees to let them go, and Atu gets jealous that Takudo caved to someone's cuteness other than her. Emily still isn't fully at ease about sending those two alone, but Takudo says it's fine since he already has solid bodyguards in mind. Afterward, he heads back to the throne room, and Atu is still pouting about him giving in to Maria and Karia's request, so he isn't sure how to handle it. He turns to Maria for help, and she tells him to say exactly how he feels, so he decides to try. He walks up to Atu and apologizes for making her uneasy. She doesn't need to worry about being replaced. He's extremely grateful for everything Atu does, and for the fact she's always by his side. He tells her there's no one he'd rather be with, and that's all Atu needed. In fact, she's already picturing a happily married life with Takudo, and he isn't sure what's running through her head. But he's glad she isn't angry anymore. A short while later, Takudo takes Maria, Karia, and Atu to the clinic, but they don't see why he brought them there since none of them are sick. Takudo explains the clinic was cheap to build, so he put it up on a whim. And since Maria and Karia are heading out on a mission, he figures he might as well send the new plague doctors he made along with them as bodyguards. Thank you for watching to the end. If you enjoyed this recap, please hit the like button and subscribe. If you have any suggestions or tweaks, share them in the comments. They help me improve.